As election day nears, Donald Trump spreading fear. Vice President Kamala Harris giving tangible strategies about how to move the nation forward, how to build bridges and coalitions, and build back a strong America where we can all work together. Donald Trump, meanwhile, is talking about reinstating laws from 1798 like the Alien Enemies Act, the Alien Sedition Act, and Donald Trump's also talking openly about sending the United States military against Americans who don't agree with him and Americans who don't support him. We'll show you those clips. Donald Trump also is demonstrating some real serious medical problems. He's refusing to release his medical records. Vice President Kamala Harris released a detailed medical report showing that she is in exceptional health. Donald Trump continues to cover up what may be some very serious health conditions. And I think for those who watch his behavior, it's pretty obvious what it is that we are witnessing. Also, we are witnessing Donald Trump stranding his own supporters at his speeches. He did it again in Coachella like he did back in 2020 in Omaha, Nebraska. We'll go through what went down in Coachella. Donald Trump was also telling a crowd in California that he would not give emergency aid to Californians unless Gavin Newsom kissed his ass. Just play the clips for you so you can hear it for yourself. We'll talk about that and more on the MeidasTouch podcast. Brett and Jordy, glad to be back with you here. You both have been doing such an incredible job holding down the front here.
Thanks, Ben. Well, it's great to have you back here. I know everybody misses you very much when you're gone, but it's great. It's great to have you back in action. I've been holding it down for you here and on Political Beatdown. It's been fun. I'm not gonna lie. It's been a good time. I've been enjoying it, and it's been good. And thanks to everybody for welcoming me with all my various reports and takes that I've been doing while Ben's been out. But now we're back, Ben. We got what, 24, 23 days until election day. I mean, this is it, folks. And we are seeing the campaigns ramping up both ramping up, but in very different ways. We are seeing Donald Trump running this campaign of fear, and we are seeing Vice President Harris running this campaign of joy and hope and actual policy positions. And the difference cannot be starker at this point. Also cannot be darker if we're speaking about the kind of things that Donald Trump is proposing right now, which is really evoking some of the worst parts of human history. And, you know, we're not afraid to say it here that Donald Trump right now appears to be running his campaign like a Nazi campaign, quite frankly. I'm not going to mince words on this episode when we show you some of the things that they are doing. And we will get to all of that. First, we got to check in with Jordy. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Brett, you've been phenomenal over these last couple of weeks. Just want to reiterate that point. Face of the network, beef, just amazing. Ben, it is so great to have you back, though. It's the whole band. The band's back together, and I'm so excited for this episode. Ben, you were missed. We are so happy you're back, big bro.
Let's get right into it. Donald Trump's interview with Maria Bartiromo on Fox. You'll see right here where Donald Trump says that he will send the military against Americans who he refers to as radical leftists. Here, play this clip.
Let's remember, you've got 50,000 Chinese nationals in this country in the last couple of years. Yeah. You have people on the terrorist watch list, 350 in the last couple of years. You got, like you said, 13,000 murderers and 15,000 rapists. Right. What are you expecting? Joe Biden said he doesn't think it's going to be a peaceful election day.
Well, he doesn't have any idea what's happening in all fairness. He spends most of his day sleeping. I think the bigger problem is the enemy from within, not even the people that have come in and destroying our country. By the way, totally destroying our country. The towns, the villages, they're being inundated. But I don't think they're the problem in terms of election day. I think the bigger problem are the people from within. We have some very bad people. We have some sick people, radical left lunatics. And I think they're and it should be very easily handled by, if necessary, by National Guard, or if really necessary, by the military, because they can't let that happen.
Like, it's very clear what he's saying there. She gives him a softball question. Let me rewind here for a second, too. Just look at him. Just look at the way he physically looks. Okay? I mean, first, the makeup that he's wearing, he looks ridiculous. I mean, for those who are listening, he has so much makeup on, and it's not even done in a kind of way that blends in nicely. And you can see, like, on one side, like, his face looking like kind of super white, and then he's got the other makeup around him. He's slurring his words. Like, the first part of what he was saying about President Biden was like, and then the softball question that he gets from Maria Bartiromo, she just like makes up numbers. I don't even know what she's even talking about. There's 15,000 rapists and 50,000 this. And so she's talking about, okay, the worst of the worst people, right? She's trying to frame it as a softball to him by giving those types of stats, which you would say, look, these people are the biggest threat, right? No, Donald Trump pivots and goes, those aren't the biggest threats, actually. The biggest threats are Americans, are the enemies from within, and I'm going to use the military on them. It's very clear what he's saying. You don't have to parse his words. He said it. Here is, for those who remember, we put this out on the MeidasTouch network quite some time ago when Donald Trump started saying things like the immigrants are poisoning the blood of American citizens. Trump echoes Hitler's words on the campaign trail. We started noticing this, Brett and Jordy, 3 years ago? And again, we were being told, oh, you're being hyperbolic. Why would you say that? The same way back in 2020, we were putting out videos saying that, no, as part of what Donald Trump's going to do, he's going to overturn Roe v. Wade, and then red states are going to start arresting people and throwing them in jail for seeking reproductive care and for even trying to travel out of the state. People are like, whoa, why would you even say that? Because we're like, that's what they're saying. It's not like we're even genius prognosticators of the future. I don't have to go to a crystal ball. I'm telling you what they're saying. I'm listening to it and reflecting it back. Isn't that what journalism should have been doing? So I'd like to be like, well, we got it right. But also, I'm just telling you what it is that they are saying. Now, let me show you what Governor Walz said about that on the campaign trail. Let's play this clip.
Crossed a line that I have to tell you, in my lifetime, I would have never imagined, because we know our history. Donald Trump over the weekend was talking about using the U.S. Army against people who disagree with him. Just so you're clear about that, that's you. That's what he's talking about. This is not some mythical thing out there. He called it the enemy within. And to Donald Trump, anybody who doesn't agree with him is the enemy. I tell you that not to make you fearful or anything. I tell you that because we need to whip his butt and put this guy behind us.
Then Jake Tapper earlier in the day had Glenn Youngkin, Republican governor of Virginia, on. And I want you to watch this because this is what we were always seeing from 2016 to 2020. And frankly, this is the gaslighting that's persisted since the insurrection as well. Oh, it wasn't that bad. It's not a big deal. He didn't really mean it. That's not what he said. We actually meant to say this. And they try to normalize it. And frankly, the media has been very complicit in that process. Occasionally, they'll call it out. Seems that they're calling it out a little more now as we're getting closer to Election Day, but they still want to both sides the issues. But watch this Glenn Youngkin, Jake Tapper interview. Tapper did a good job on this one, I thought. Let's play it.
Had senior people from our national security apparatus say that there's 15,000 violent felons in the United States. They have no idea where they are. That is what I believe the president is referring to. I don't think that he's referring to elected people in America. But I'm
literally reading his quotes. I'm literally reading his quotes to you, and I played them earlier so you could hear that they were not made up by me. He's literally talking about, quote, radical left lunatics. And then one of those lunatics he mentioned was Congressman Adam Schiff. Criminals should be locked up. Migrants who are in this country illegally, who are violent, should be locked up and deported. I grant you all of that, and I am not denying that it's happening at all.
So, Jake,
but I'm talking about Donald Trump saying that he wants to use the National Guard and the military to go after the left. That's what he's saying.
I don't believe that's what he's saying. But listen, you and I are going to argue about that. But I would suggest if you would also.
I played the quote and I read it to you.
If you would also balance
you can wish that he weren't saying that, but that's what he's saying.
Jake, all the time people are taking little snippets of content and turning it into a big narrative. I think exactly what he's concerned about, because I've heard him express it before, are the number of national security risks, violent criminals, and folks who are coming into this country where we don't know where they are, that are committing crimes and put people's safety at risk. And I do think that on the same balance, I think you should cover the fact that over the course of the last 3.5 years, there has been an unprecedented and unrestrained flow across our border, and it has put Americans' lives and so much of our...
So the last part, what he's saying also deserves a rebuttal. Pro-democracy people uniting with actually conservative Republicans put forward a bill that would deal with addressing immigration issues. It's a bipartisan immigration bill. It would direct more resources at the border. It would direct more resources to expedite or address asylum claims. It would provide more resources to detect fentanyl, all of the things that we all agree should happen, because when problems happen, they should be solved. And we have to, the way our system works is that we don't have dictators in America. So you have a Congress, you have the Senate, you have the House of Representatives. They have to pass legislation that has to get signed by the commander-in-chief, by the president of the United States. So when the legislation was being proposed and negotiated, Donald Trump told people to kill the bill. Donald Trump wants there to be a crisis at the border so he can run on the crisis at the border. But not only that, he wants to use the crisis at the border to attack Americans who disagree with him and send the military against we, the people. And then he has people like Glenn Youngkin say, well, that's not what he really said. That's not what he really meant. It is what he meant. And he's been saying it at speech after speech after speech. Let's talk about some of those.
Let me just say, Ben, you know what's wild about that also is when you look at Donald Trump's rhetoric, it has actually increased since we first identified this. Like, I'm reflecting on this graphic that we made that we pulled up before for those listening. This is the Trump echoes Hitler's words on the campaign trail. And in this version of our graphic, which I think we now have to update, we were comparing to Hitler's statement where Hitler said, I will take care of the enemy within. And at that point, Donald Trump was saying, I will take care of the threat within. Now it seems, or it is, that Donald Trump has fully taken Hitler's language verbatim and is now referring to it as the enemy within, as we just heard in this Fox clip. And I truly, growing up, wondered like how throughout history people allowed these horrific people to take power. And then it wasn't until Donald Trump where it all kind of clicked and I saw it happen. And we are seeing it happening right now as we see people like Glenn Youngkin do exactly what he did there. That is the same sort of behavior that led to the Hitlers of the world taking power. And I have to remind everybody that people like Hitler and Mussolini and Chavez and Putin, these are people who were all democratically elected. And then they got in and they dismantled the democracy. And if you think what we're looking at right now is any different with Donald Trump, all the warning signs are there. And so that's why it's so vital that we all are out here screaming these messages out and not mincing words in the way we are describing these things. And because you know what it is when you try to kind of recontextualize these phrases, when the media does it, they are essentially doing exactly what we just heard Glenn Youngkin do right there in that interview in their own way, but they're doing it in their both sidesy way. And it's dangerous. It's very obvious when we see Youngkin doing it, but that's what too much of the press does every single day with Trump's words as they try to make excuses for it over and over and over.
You're so right, Brett. And the other thing that I really agree with is when you say that the rhetoric has been amplifying as we get closer to this election. I think this is something that we've been warning about the last couple of months, about as we lead up to this election, everyone just brace yourselves because the rhetoric is going to get even more and more unhinged. And we've seen that day after day. And it's important. We do a good job here. Ben, Brett, you guys doing a phenomenal job. The network does a phenomenal job calling it out every step of the way. But corporate media at large, they like sane wash the behavior in such a way that is doing Trump's bidding for him. And it's just unfortunate to see with so much on the line. And I give Tapper credit there. He did a good job pushing back on Youngkin. Ben.
The New York Times headlines are like, Donald Trump continues to talk about his infatuation for genes and the different types of genes that people have. I mean, you're referring to eugenics. You're referring to when Donald Trump is out there saying, oh, you have good genes, they have bad genes. We need to remove the people with bad genes. That's not a fascination with genes. He's talking about the stuff that Hitler talked about. And he believes that there are people with powerful genes and people with weak genes that need to be exterminated and eliminated. And Donald Trump, when he talks about his mass deportations, the language that he uses, the words he says is, it will be a bloody affair. It's going to have to be very bloody. Direct war quotes that he says during his speeches. Here he is talking about genes. Let's play it.
He's the longest serving professor in the history of MIT, like 40 years, 41 years. Can you imagine? So this is good. Does anybody believe in genes? You guys believe in genetics? These guys have good genetics too for safety, and that's all we want you for. We don't want you for anything else. We don't want you for anything else. But for those...
And I just want you to think about all of the things he said in that short period of time there. The first thing he's saying when he's talking about he was a professor for a long time, he's talking about his uncle who worked at MIT. And he's saying because his uncle worked at MIT in 1972, do you believe in genes? Then Donald Trump says, that must make me a nuclear physicist because my uncle worked at MIT. And he repeats this over and over again. Then he sees a group of people over there. I'm not sure if they were first responders or the security guards. And he goes, you have good genes, but all you are good for is to stop people, like to protect people here, but you shouldn't be doing anything else with yourself, like other than that one job that you have. That's all you're good for. You're good for nothing else. And what he's been referring to, this is, we've been hearing it a lot more. He goes, I do the weave. And what he means by the weave, what he means is he loses track of what he's saying in very simple sentences. And then he starts to talk about all types of different things, like just random stuff. And then he goes, you see, I did the weave. And that's covering up the fact that he can't speak in sentences. I just want you to think about that, because I remember all of the attention and articles about President Biden, because President Biden stuttered and President Biden was older, even though President Biden released like a detailed medical report where we got like platelet levels, hemoglobin levels, allergies. Like you couldn't get more specific than that. Vice President Kamala Harris also released it. Donald Trump, he released a medical report, back in 2015, and it wasn't a report. It was a 3-paragraph letter from a gastroenterologist, Dr. Harold Bornstein, who passed away under mysterious circumstances in 2021, and who Trump had his bodyguards raid Dr. Harold Bornstein's office and take and steal back Donald Trump's medical file in 2018. And the letter was like, Donald Trump is the healthiest American to ever live and will by far be the healthiest person ever to hold the office. Other than that, now Donald Trump cites Ronnie Jackson, you know, the guy who oversaw turning the White House into an actual pill popping. Like no one even talks about that too. That like the White House was like a drug den when Donald Trump was in office, with fentanyl patches, Versed, which is the date rape drug, and all of the stuff while Ronnie Jackson was there. But now Trump goes, well, Ronnie Jackson says I'm the healthiest person ever. And that's all he'll do. But we see Donald Trump's serious health issues that they're manifesting in public over and over again. I'll just show you one example right here. We've been talking about this. This was Donald Trump speaking in the Detroit Economic Club, where it seemed that he soiled himself in public. Here, let's play this clip.
This is a catastrophe for the American dream and a dire crisis from commerce to labor to FEMA.
I think we have also a podcast interview that Donald Trump did earlier where he was just not saying sentences correctly and just fumbling basic words. And then his handlers whisked him away from this rambling and confused interview. I think we've got it. Let's play it.
Give me 1 second. I'll get that in 1 second.
Yeah, grab that in 1 second. The part I want to share though about, you know, Donald Trump, you know, potentially soil it here. Let's play this and then I'll talk about Donald Trump soiling himself.
I see my people are going crazy over there.
Oh, that's it?
At a certain point, you know, at a certain point, you don't mind if they go crazy, but then you say, okay, it's time to go. Time to go, right? Okay.
They just said, basically, get out of here. And look, I'm not going to talk too much. I did lots of videos on Donald Trump potentially soiling himself. I've shown the videos of him when he was in office. with the late Senator Dianne Feinstein of California. Like, do we have that video of him next to her? I think we've got that video.
So today we're here in a bipartisan fashion to show leadership in an effort to end this senseless violence. It can be ended.
There's videos of him with the president of Turkey, Erdogan, and lots of other videos like that. And the only point in bringing it up is the issue that, frankly, Vice President Kamala Harris has been talking about over and over again. I think we've got the video of her on the tarmac where she says it's obvious that his team doesn't want the American people to really see who he is and whether he's, even fit to do any of these things. There seems to be a lot of serious medical issues, cognitive issues, issues regarding his pathology and the malignant narcissism and a bunch of other serious health issues. We know from another report we did that his father, Fred, started developing serious dementia around Donald Trump's age. But let me show you first. This is Vice President Kamala Harris on, I think, the tarmac right here, talking about Donald Trump's just not hiding a bunch of stuff. Here, play this clip.
So today I released my medical records, as has, I believe, every candidate for president of the United States except Donald Trump in this election cycle. And it's just a further example of his lack of transparency, that on top of his unwillingness to debate again, his unwillingness to do an interview with 60 Minutes, which again is part of the norm of what anyone running for president of the United States does. And I think that it's obvious that his team, at least, does not want the American people to see everything about who he is. And you put that on top of even the most recent reports of General Milley, one of the people who worked the closest with Donald Trump, referring to him as being unstable. And it is clear to me that he and his team do not want the American people to really see what it is that he is doing and whether or not he actually is fit to do the job of being president of the United States. So,
I mean, just think about what we've already shown you in the first 20 or so minutes of this episode alone, right? Donald Trump's calling for the military to attack Americans who don't agree with him. You've got Donald Trump unable to put together basic sentences. You've got Donald Trump potentially soiling himself in public in a Detroit speech. You have all of that happening, talking about genes and using eugenic rhetoric. All of that's happening. And there's a lot more we're going to show you. We're going to show you the contrast between Vice President Kamala Harris and Donald Trump. And you could, just judge for yourself. One of the questions I want to hear, Brett, from you on in particular is Vice President Kamala Harris has decided to do an interview with Bret Baier on Fox. Now MAGA is attacking Bret Baier. I want to get your perspective on, do you think she should have done that interview or not? She's actually taking tough interviews, unlike Donald Trump. Let's talk about that and more, but let's take our first quick break of the show.
All right, let's talk about feeling young and full of energy. Ever heard of NAD+? It's in every single living cell in your body, and it is a powerhouse when it comes to repairing damage, detoxifying, and giving you that boost of energy we all need. But here's the kicker. By the time you hit 50, your NAD+ levels are cut in half. Yep, half. That's why you start feeling a little sluggish, maybe a little less energetic, or just older. But don't worry, there's a fix. Qualia NAD Plus makes it super easy to get those NAD Plus levels back up so you can feel like your best self again. This simple supplement is clinically studied to boost your NAD Plus levels by an average of 74%. And the best part, it's vegan, gluten-free, non-GMO, and packed with all the good stuff to naturally boost your NAD Plus production. Let me break it down for you. Qualia NAD Plus contains contains 3 powerhouse ingredients that are NAD plus precursors: niacin, niacinamide, and niagen, aka NR. These are some of the most potent ingredients known to science when it comes to boosting your NAD plus levels, and they're all right here in one supplement. Since I started using Qualia NAD plus, I've noticed a real difference in how I feel. I'm talking about energy that I haven't felt in a bit. It's like a switch flipped. I actually want to do stuff again. I had no idea how much those low NAD plus levels were dragging me down, making me feel much older than I actually am, but now that's a thing of the past. If you want to stay at the cutting edge of aging research and feel more like yourself, boosting your NAD plus levels with Qualia NAD plus is the way to go. Your future self will thank you for it. To boost your NAD plus levels up to 50%, go to qualialife.com/Jordy for up to 74% off and use code Jordy at checkout for an additional 15% off. That's qualialife.com/Jordy for an extra 15% off your purchase. Thanks to Qualia for sponsoring today's episode.
So when we started the MeidasTouch Network, an online store was the furthest thing from my mind. Now we're able to bring you the best pro-democracy merchandise, and it's so easy. And it's all because I use Shopify. Shopify is the global commerce platform that helps you sell at every stage of your business, from the launch your online shop stage to the first real-life store stage, all the way to the did we just hit 1 million order stage? Shopify is there to help you grow the same way it helped us grow at the MeidasTouch Network. Whether you're selling scented soap, sounds good, or offering outdoor outfits, Shopify helps you sell everywhere. From their all-in-one e-commerce platform to their in-person POS system, wherever and whatever you're selling, Shopify's got you covered. Shopify helps you turn browsers into buyers with the internet's best converting checkout, 36% better on average compared to the other leading commerce platforms, and sell more with less effort thanks to Shopify Magic, your AI-powered all-star. We use Shopify at store.meidastouch.com, and I know you know how seamless that is, and it's completely revolutionized everything we do. It allows us to easily manage our shop, view analytics, provide the best customer service, and streamline our entire online shopping experience from A to Z. We wouldn't be able to bring you all the products you know and love without Shopify, and we can't speak highly enough about Shopify. Shopify powers 10% of all e-commerce in the US, and Shopify's the global force behind Allbirds, Rothy's, and Brooklyn, and millions of other entrepreneurs like MeidasTouch of every size across 175 countries. Plus, Shopify's award-winning help is there to support your success every step of the way, because businesses that grow with Shopify. So sign up for a $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/Meidas, all lowercase. Go to Shopify, SHOPIFY. So go to shopify.com/Meidas now to grow your business no matter what stage you're in. Shopify.com/Meidas.
Let's go. Phenomenal product. Qualia, phenomenal service. Shopify, definitely links in description. Use our codes, use our links, let them know we sent you. Helps us. They're fantastic products. And real quick, one last plug. Flash sale at the MeidasTouch merch store, store.meidastouch.com. Get 20% off with the code Meidas. You guessed it. So use that code. We got some phenomenal stuff here, trying to get it all out by Election Day. So definitely check it out. Some amazing stuff. That's store.meidastouch.com. Use code Meidas for 20% off. Benji.
Definitely some different decision making about how these campaigns are being run. On the one hand, you have Donald Trump going into states where he is down by massive amounts, like going to California and then giving a speech in Coachella. But I guess Donald Trump wants to go there so he can lie about the crowd size and just say, I got 100,000 people in Coachella. Even in California, they support me. So clearly around the country, they do. Seems like he's just trying to set up the types of arguments he's going to make when he loses, so he can try to launch another January 6th style coup. And that going to a place like California, look, I had all the other states locked up, so that's why I'm in California, because I thought I was going to win California, just to get you into kind of his pathology. That's one of the reasons. The other reason is because he wants to lie and say that he got more people at Coachella than like Coachella itself. I don't even think there was more than 10,000 people there. That's not to say that that's not a large group of people. I mean, it's not an insignificant number. It's not 100,000 people. So Trump's doing that. And
Coachella itself, like the festival, gets a little over 100,000 people during their festival each day. So this was nowhere near that. And this was not on the Coachella grounds either. It was in some other like private location. And sorry, I
have to contextualize 100,000 people. So many people, just like the most amount of people. So I went to Ohio State, the entire stadium where you get the entire state of Ohio to come to Columbus, that fills 107,000 people.
Yeah.
That is 100,000 people. Trump is getting nowhere near an entire Buckeye stadium worth of people. Come on.
And by the way, 10,000 people, it's that's cool. It's
cool.
It's impressive.
Cool.
But you like the lying, the endless lying about these things. It's
lying.
just like enough. Like,
And then it's all self-referential lies. And he'll go, I got 101,000 people in Butler. So he like lies and says 101,000 people because it has to be slightly more. And again, it's a lie. Then he says, remember the Wildwood, New Jersey crowd size lie where he said there was like 120,000 people in Wildwood, New Jersey.
I mean, you could literally just look at the permits for these events as well. Like the Butler permit, I think only allowed up to 20,000 people. So at max, there was 20,000. Once again, a lot of people, right? Well, it's a lot of people to have in Pennsylvania, but it ain't 101,000. And he just lies over and over and over again. Ben, you're right. It's part of him trying to build this record so that he challenges the results of the election yet again. He has already been planting the seeds over and over and over. And he's had a lot of help, even more help this time, quite frankly, from networks like Fox and from these kind of MAGA influencers online to be planting these seeds of doubt within his own followers. By the way, it's also what all this push about these kind of prediction markets are about. These prediction markets don't mean anything. They're people betting. They're people throwing their money at things. Quite literally does not mean anything. But there are some of these prediction markets which have Trump up, and they view these as if it is actual hard data and polling, which it is not anything near that. But these are all kind of data points, and I use that term very lightly, that they want to point to after they lose and go, look, this was impossible. There must have been some foul play here. And then we're going to see them kind of put in that same effort that they did after the 2020 election into this election. And they're just going to try to run the same scheme back, honestly. That's what it seems like.
And you see the scheme, though, evolve, though. And actually, the power around the authoritarian movement grows in the vacuum of accountability, right? When the Supreme Court gives Donald Trump absolute immunity, the domino effect doesn't just relate to the Washington, D.C. criminal case or the other cases filed against Donald Trump, right? The United States Supreme Court's message is basically generally laws don't apply in the United States, which as a lawyer, as a student of the Supreme Court, it's a tragic message that they sent. But think about it. If you have absolute immunity to order SEAL Team 6 to kill your political opponents, because that's what the Supreme Court ruled, that would be a core constitutional function or official act to order the military to do things. So you order the military to kill political opponents, core constitutional function under the commander-in-chief role, you would have absolute immunity. So do any laws regarding the FEC, right, actually mean anything? Does the Federal Elections Commission, really, the FEC is going to stop Elon Musk now and Donald Trump when the Supreme Court said that they can order SEAL Team 6 to literally kill people? So I think what we've seen here in this election is the floodgates totally opening of all of the lawlessness, which frankly, we've had to build. Stuff like the MeidasTouch Network and other independent medias had to emerge to kind of check it and to kind of just speak with a people-powered movement versus all of these kind of billionaire manipulation tactics that they're using right here. And so I just think it's important to call this out. Think about it. You go back to 2016, what was Donald Trump's main tool? The National Enquirer, right? That's like a mosquito in the swing of things, using the National Enquirer to spread the false stories. Then in 2020, they get to use the full apparatus of Fox. Then in 2024, they've got Elon Musk and a coalition of billionaires who want to be Russian-style oligarchs and not follow the laws, basically just doing whatever it is that they want. It's why it's so important to stop this and that we all be educated on what's happening. Donald Trump's also making posts like this: open border equals packed classroom. So one of the things that Trump's running on, for those who are listening on audio, you can't see it obviously, but for those watching, this is an AI image, and Donald Trump uses AI for all of the ways people feared that AI would be used. Donald Trump's using all of it. As I've said before, there's a, sometimes people call it like a logical fallacy when people are making legal arguments, the slippery slope argument or the parade of horribles argument. Well, if you let someone do that, then the floodgates open and then the worst happens. With Trump, it's never a fallacy. It is literally the worst case scenario is what he wants. He's very incompetent, and sometimes he's his own worst enemy in achieving those ends, because he's also lazy sometimes and dumb, and he cares so much about himself and his vanity that he screws up. But the parade of horribles is his outcome. The lawyer, believe me, was instructed by Donald Trump to say, can I order SEAL Team 6 to kill my political opponents? Because Trump would use SEAL Team 6 to kill his political opponents. He's saying it in speeches. He's going to send the military to go after all of us. That's what he's saying he's going to do. And here with AI, here, take a look. If you actually zoom in, oh, wait a minute. These aren't even human beings. They're like some sort of like alien things, like, that look like human beings. But Trump constantly using AI images to push these messages out there filled with hate and venom and lies. Now, Vice President Kamala Harris's campaign is being very strategic, right? They have a strong ground game, probably the strongest ground game in the history of politics. Volunteers everywhere, door knocking, doing all the local stuff that should be done in an election. Trump's not doing any of that. He's got Lara Trump running boat parades or stuff like that. Do we have the photos of Lara Trump from earlier in the day with her boat parade? I think this is what Trump and MAGA is doing. We'll give the comparison now. You've got Lara Trump bringing, you guessed it, Trump family members on their Trump boat that has Trump's image on it, and it says fight, fight, fight. And I think we have an image of other people who joined this parade. I really don't want to show it. Do we just have a photo? I don't even want to show the photo of it because it's Nazi.
I've got the video, but
I don't want to give it. You will all have to take my word that.
How about this? I'll do a deeper dive on this tomorrow morning, and we'll put out a longer video on this because I do think it's important. But I agree. It's a lot.
It's boats with swastikas that are following the Lara Trump boat who signed up for this boat parade. So that's what they're doing. On the other hand, let's show you the fired up people at the Villages of all places, which is usually a conservative place in Florida. Here are the Villages fired up. I think we've got videos like that. At the Villages in Florida and across Florida, and frankly, across the country, Democrats focusing on the absentee voting, the early voting, the voting by mail. And Brett, you did a deep dive on this, right? When you go through the specific states, you look in Pennsylvania, you look in Michigan, you look even in Florida, the proportion of Democratic votes versus Republican votes, there's some actual data we can glean. And this looks consistent with a lot of the stuff we've been seeing in the post-Roe world.
Yeah, we're seeing a whole lot of enthusiasm across Michigan and across Pennsylvania in particular in terms of Democrats returning ballots. So how you could understand how it works is when you submit a mail-in or an absentee ballot, it's impossible to know by public data who you voted for. But what it is possible to know is what is your what is your registration? Are you registered as a Democrat? Are you registered as a Republican? Are you non-affiliated? Are you independent, et cetera? So we're able to glean some data just from that. But what I think even beyond, what's going to be even a little tougher with this election is there are a lot of Republicans now crossing over to vote for Vice President Kamala Harris. And there are a lot of independent and moderate voters who are voting for Vice President Kamala Harris. So I think it even gets a little more difficult to read the tea leaves when you're looking at these voter registrations, especially in a vote by mail situation when those people typically lean towards Democrats in these past few years, because Donald Trump has so vilified mail-in voting, which used to be a staple of the Republican Party. But now you're seeing all these ballots coming in. You're seeing Democrats leading by wide margins, like very wide margins, especially in Pennsylvania. And when you look at Michigan and you look at what are the cities who are submitting their ballots early, Detroit leads by like a ton, like by far, and above any other area, not even close. And Detroit is, of course, a Democratic hotbed, which, by the way, Donald Trump has been insulting and insulted to their faces when he was there at the Detroit Economic Club. And even
that wasn't a good strategy, Brett?
I mean, listen, just think about it. He goes to Detroit, he insults Detroit. He goes to Milwaukee, he says Milwaukee's a crappy city. He does this everywhere he goes. He goes to California, he says California's a horrible city and there are blackouts every day and that it's a disaster. I live here. It's a great place, pretty nice place, I'm just going to say. And so, you have Trump spreading all these lies and hatred about these cities everywhere he goes. But you see Democrats, you see the vice president, you see these operations putting in the actual work and sticking to the fundamentals. And so this election, it's going to be interesting to see ultimately. I think interesting is maybe not the best word, but to see ultimately what wins. Do the fundamentals win? Is the putting in the actual work? Is the organizing? Is the funding these field offices? Is that going to be the thing that pays off and ensures that Vice President Harris wins this election? Or is that vicious, vile propaganda spread by people like Donald Trump and Elon Musk, this endless disinformation echo chamber, is that going to be enough? And now I think we've seen, though, in these past few elections, that that's been enough to delude themselves into thinking that they were going to win or thinking that they were dominating the conversation. But in fact, it left them in this sort of echo chamber that was not reflective of the actual vote at the end of the day. And we saw this. Remember, I don't have the clip on me, but I'm sure people out there remember that clip of Charlie Kirk we played after, I forget if it was the midterms. Maybe it was after the midterms, when Charlie Kirk was on there with that Arizona politician, Wendy Rogers, and they were depressed. And Charlie Kirk was like, or one of them was like, maybe we've been in an echo chamber this whole time and we didn't even realize it. And of course, now they're back in the echo chamber, but that's what we're dealing with. We're dealing with some really dark forces of lies and disinformation, and we're dealing with fundamentals from Vice President Harris, Governor Walz, and this Democratic operation on the ground of people door knocking. And as I speak to people who are actually doing door knocking, as I speak to people who are walking around the suburbs around Milwaukee and all across the country, for example, everybody says the enthusiasm for Vice President Kamala Harris far exceeds anything they're seeing about Donald Trump. They're seeing far fewer Trump signs this year. They're seeing far more Harris signs this year. And I think all that kind of anecdotal data matches up with these returns that we're seeing. And I hope that continues to, that those firewalls continue to increase on the ground, and that the Democrats and Kamala Harris are able to make a lead that is far too big for them to even attempt to, try to refute at the end of the day. But we're seeing all this go down, and Vice President Harris, by the way, it's not like she's playing in like prevent defense like a lot of people are trying to pretend. It's also not like the polls have shifted substantially in any direction at this point. Like, people like to doom when there's no changes in the polls. I think people just get bored ultimately, but literally the polls have been pretty stagnant. The early voter registration data has been very strong. You look at the vice president's schedule every day this week. She has multiple events in different swing states, crisscrossing the country. And in addition to that, she's doing all these interviews. She did the Shade Room earlier today. You've seen these podcasts she's doing. She did Roland Martin's show. She's doing Fox News with Brett Baier on Wednesday, which is something that Ben brought up before. And Fox is tricky, right? Because Fox is a network that I don't like rewarding, because they've engaged in bad behavior, to say the least, and do it every single day. I mean, I could give you 787 million reasons why Kamala Harris should not treat Fox like a normal network. Yet a lot of people watch Fox assuming that it is a normal network, unfortunately. And so I think it's a good idea for her to do it ultimately. And I think Brett Baier is a good host to do it with, because Brett Baier is at least one of the more kind of straight news folks at Fox News. I think that will be more fair than, you don't do an interview with Hannity, right? You don't do an interview with Jesse Waters, or these are fake, people. At least Brett Baier tries, I think, to be a real journalist, but you're going to see, and it's already happening, people like Brett Baer, what happens is the same way that, Fox pressured CNN and ABC during those debates to try to ask certain things and be tougher on, Kamala Harris or whatever during those debates. That pressure campaign now works against them. And so you see all the MAGA people now yelling at Brett Baer, criticizing him for even doing this, and trying to kind of pressure him and work the refs a little bit into being harder on Vice President Kamala Harris and trying to catch her in these like gotcha situations. But I think she's been great in these interviews. I think she's, more than equipped to handle whatever is thrown at her ultimately. And I think it's good for her to get her face out and not play like in this prevent defense as if, as if she has this thing in the bag and she's going to coast to the finish line. I think every single day she needs to be doing things. And this is, an example of that. And I'm happy to see it.
Couldn't agree more. Love the media blitz and just love the attack mode and offense, this late in the game. It's important, and she's leaving no stone left unturned. I think it's crucial.
I think the number one issue when people look at the voting behavior is going to be abortion, women's reproductive rights. Then I think we're going to see economy as a number two. However, I think that throughout all of these issues, the real number one issue is going to be normalcy. And that's not a thing that could be actually like asked per se, because it doesn't fit into like a typical issue. But I think that the overwhelming silent majority of Americans are yearning for normalcy. You want to go to a family dinner and not be so divided because you have some MAGA family member saying that the earth is flat and that hurricanes are geoengineered by the government to attack red states, or to say that COVID was a way to undermine Donald Trump, or to say that migrants who are actually helping communities and people who are here lawfully, who were invited by communities, to say that they're eating cats and dogs. Like we don't want that. And I think that overwhelmingly Americans are going to vote for normalcy. It's why the media sane washing Donald Trump has been so dangerous, because if Americans like, well, I don't know. I mean, these are both just politicians. When you get into that mindset, it's a problematic mindset, because that just aren't the choices. I truly would have way more respect for the Republican Party if they were like, look, here's the deal. We created this thing called Project 2025 because we think that this will be better for the country. We think that democracy is messy. We like what they're doing in China and Russia, and we think that that's a better path. We want an authoritarian. Donald Trump is very crazy. He's unstable. But look, we got J.D. Vance, who's funded by Peter Thiel and propped up by Elon Musk, and he's really our guy also. But we have this agenda. We think that women are second-class citizens. That's what the views are. If they said those things, because that's actually what they believed, and that's what was on the ballot, you'd be like, okay. And people voted for those. People voted for those things. You think about some of these places. Like, here's the thing. Like think about like in Iran or Saudi Arabia, right? The ruling party there, they don't pretend that they're not for the things. They at least go, hey, we want to rule with, here's our Sharia law. Here's what we want to do. And they're at least saying it. The gaslighting here is just so next level that these MAGAs pretend that they support the things that they absolutely oppose. And that's the whole cycle, so they can get into power and then take away your rights. So you constantly have to call them out, because every single thing is a lie every single day, over and over again. But I just think the American people, by and large, get it. We're sick and tired of being lied to every day, and we want to go forward with love and compassion and humanity. That's my view. Let's take our last quick break of the show. As a kid, I loved eating cereal, but as an adult, I don't want all that sugar, and most cereals don't give me the protein I need. Then I found Magic Spoon, a nostalgically delicious cereal that tastes just like my childhood favorites, but without the sugar and with a ton of protein. And if you're already a Magic Spoon fan like I am, I have big news. Magic Spoon has turned their super popular cereal into high protein treats that are light, crispy, and taste just like those classic crunchy cereal bars. Magic Spoon's brand new treats are so delicious and have already become my favorite before and after gym snack. Every serving of Magic Spoon cereal has 13 grams of protein, 0 grams of sugar, and 4 grams of net carbs, so you can feel good about what you are eating. The most popular flavors are fruity and cocoa, and there's so many more. I love the cocoa ones. Magic Spoon's brand new treats are crispy, crunchy, airy, and an easy way to get 11 grams of protein on the go. And for the first time ever, Magic Spoon treats are available in grocery stores with delicious flavors like marshmallow and chocolate peanut butter, chocolatey peanut butter. I personally love Magic Spoon's chocolatey peanut butter treats. I have one every morning to start the day off on the right foot, and I know you will love it as well. Get $5 off your next order at magicspoon.com/Meidas, or look for Magic Spoon in your nearest grocery store. That's magicspoon.com/Meidas, MEIDAS, for $5 off. Magic Spoon, hold on to the dream. magicspoon.com/Meidas. All right, are you ready for this fact? Traditional bed sheets can harbor more bacteria than a toilet seat. It can lead to acne, allergies, and stuffy noses. It's just gross. Miracle Made, however, offers a whole line of self-cleaning antibacterial bedding, such as sheets, pillowcases, and comforters that prevent up to 99.7% of bacteria growth and require up to 3 times less laundry. It's why I use Miracle Made on my bedding. Using silver-infused fabrics inspired by NASA, Miracle Made sheets are thermoregulating and designed to keep you at the perfect temperature all night long, no matter the weather, so you get a better sleep every single night. It's why I love Miracle Sheets. Miracle Sheets are luxuriously comfortable without the high price tag of other luxury brands and feel as nice, if not nicer, than sheets used by some 5-star hotels. So go to trymiracle.com/Meidas. trymiracle.com/Meidas and try Miracle Made sheets today. And whether you're buying them for yourself or as a gift for a loved one, if you order today, you can save up to 40%. And if you use our promo code Meidas at checkout, you'll get 3 free towels and save an extra 20%. Miracle is so confident in their product, it's backed by a 30-day money-back guarantee. So if you aren't 100% satisfied, you'll get a full refund. Upgrade your sleep with Miracle Made. Go to trymiracle.com/Meidas and use the code Meidas to claim your free 3-piece towel set and save over 40% off. Again, that's trymiracle.com/Meidas to treat yourself. Thank you, Miracle Made, for sponsoring this episode.
Let's face it, after a night with drinks, I don't bounce back the next day like I used to. Hey, I got to be honest with myself, right? It feels like I have to choose between having a great night or a great next day. That is until I found pre-alcohol. ZBiotics pre-alcohol probiotic drink is the world's first genetically engineered probiotic. It was invented by PhD scientists to tackle rough mornings after drinking. Here's how it works. When you drink, alcohol gets converted into a toxic byproduct in the gut. It's this byproduct, not dehydration, that's to blame for your rough next day. Pre-alcohol produces an enzyme to break this byproduct down. Just remember to make ZBiotics your first drink of the night. Drink responsibly, and you'll feel your best tomorrow. Every time I have pre-alcohol before drinks, I notice a difference the next day. For example, after a fun night out with friends at like a local bar or wherever we go, I could still get up the next morning and hit the gym. And I'll admit, I was skeptical at first, but I tried it at a dinner party with some friends. And the next morning, I felt great, ready to tackle the day, ready to do more videos here at the MeidasTouch Network. I kept hearing about pre-alcohol and wondered what it was actually like. Now that I've tried it, I get the hype. Plus, with their GMO technology, ZBiotics is continuing to create probiotics that tackle the challenges of modern living. Go to zbiotics.com/Meidas to learn more and get 15% off your first order when you use code Meidas at checkout. ZBiotics is backed with a 100% money-back guarantee, so if you are unsatisfied for any reason, they'll refund your money, no questions asked. Remember to head to zbiotics.com/Meidas and use that code Meidas. It's MEIDAS at checkout for 15% off.
Let's go. Shout out to our sponsors. Links in description of both YouTube and audio. Use the links, use the codes, let them know we sent you. Fantastic stuff there. Benji, where are we going next?
Data.
Data.
Data points, Jordy. Let me give everybody just some real data right now. So the primaries, not that long ago in 2024, right? Actual voting data. And what did we see within the Republican primaries, even closed Republican primaries? Nikki Haley was getting about 15 to 20% of the vote, even months after, or weeks after, months after she had dropped out. Donald Trump was underperforming the coveted 538 polling averages in mostly all states. And in states like Michigan, Pennsylvania, and others by big margins. Like in Michigan, Donald Trump underperformed the 538 polling average by about 15 points. So that's real data. Give you some other data points as well. Remember what was happening when the red wave or red wall, whatever they were calling it, narrative was developing back in 2022? What was happening was the Republican Party, and this is kind of a Trump machination, right, as part of the fraud he embodies and everything, because this hadn't really been seen in politics before. They started developing polling companies to show the emperor with no clothes, or the wannabe emperor who relieves and soils himself in public, however you want to call it, to show that he was doing better than he actually was. So an entire cottage industry of like Trump sycophantic pollsters developed. We're seeing that happen again. It's why we frequently have on Tom Bonnier and Simon Rosenberg, who were analyzing the actual raw data, votes coming in and early voting statistics and where people are registered, and focusing on the hard data that we have. We knew there wasn't going to be a red wave because we were seeing the data and we saw, wait a minute, there's a lot of votes here. Here's what's happening. We're seeing that again right now. And you may be saying, Brett, you say that the polls are the same, but why am I hearing, though, that a lot of these swing states where Vice President Kamala Harris was leading now are all even, or Trump's ahead by one? I think it's something like 30 to 34 new pollsters have been introduced very recently.
I think the latest number I've seen about the polls that have recently been thrown in October was 60 from Simon Rosenberg.
60. And I think only one of them or two of them were kind of Democratic aligned. And so you may be saying, Democrats, what are you doing? You're going to let the Republicans create all these polling companies and skew the averages? What are you doing? Well, in theory, the Democrats are out there registering actual people to vote, making sure people vote early, setting up field offices, and doing those things, while the Republicans have built a polling industry that tries to skew the averages. And again, it's not to say that I hold all of the answers and they may be right and I may be wrong. I'm just simply reflecting that if you're confident that you're going to be winning, and why would you then create all of these polls to skew the averages if you were just confident in the results by themselves? So I think that's an important data point to reflect upon. I think another important data point to reflect upon is, are any of the campaigns making major staff changes right now? Because normally, if I use a baseball example, right? If your pitcher's doing well, you don't pull your pitcher out. You keep the pitcher in as long as possible. You usually switch it up if something's happening that you're seeing, right? So we can glean data from there. Well, we learned over the weekend that the Trump campaign had a pretty significant shakeup. Stephen Chung, who was the guy who would always say like, Kamala, Kamala, and he would like mock in the most amateurish ways Vice President Kamala Harris, and like he would respond to like denial, like he would respond denying stories by like just cursing. That's effing BS. Like he would actually say the curses rather than just, we disagree. He would like just curse. Anyway, he's been kind of pushed aside, and Caroline Leavitt's been pushed aside, and they brought in this guy, Tim Murtaugh, to be there to lead their communications department. Now, one of the other data points right here, we're learning today that Donald Trump's holding a fundraiser on October 27th, 2024, kind of the big fundraisers that you would normally hold months ago. And by October 27th, I mean, all the TV's pretty much going to be booked. Not like you're going to take that money and then run, ads with that. I mean, all that stuff has been booked now. And remember our reporting back from 6 months ago. Remember then when Biden was in office and then Kamala Harris inherited some of that campaign stuff, they had locked in all of the campaign spots at the time you're supposed to lock them in, so that right around now in all of the swing states, you will see a lot more Kamala Harris ads than Donald Trump ads, like by significant multiples. So you're asking yourself, why are they throwing some fundraiser on October 27th, 2024? And one of the only explanations is that they want to use money to start filing lawsuits when they lose, or in their own mind, they're going to develop a war chest. One, as part of Donald Trump's grift, or two, to try to get a lot more money for litigation and lawsuits and things like that. Because why else would you be doing an event at that time period? So I think if you add those data points, and then you think too, like a lot of the polls today, and again, if you look at it, Vice President Kamala Harris is slightly up in the polls, if you really were to look at the top polls and the averages. But the current, I hate talking about polling though a lot too, because the current polling modeling views things as, well, what were the patterns in 2020? And I think that misunderstands the electorate in a lot of shifting ways. I think there are a lot of two-time Trump voters post January 6th as a major event. Democracies, again, I said before, abortion, women's reproductive rights, economy. I think democracy will be one of the top issues as well when we see the exit polls. I think there's a large group of those people who will be voting for Vice President Kamala Harris, whether you call them the pro-democracy Republicans, Nikki Haley voters, classic Republicans, whatever. And that can't be modeled right now if you're looking at 2020 stats of voting behavior. So I think that's that's an issue. And then I just think that we've seen in the post-Roe world, how many times have we reported now, and again, just on elections where the candidate was a plus 15 district or a plus 10 district, and I'm talking about cities, whether we were talking about Tampa, whether we were talking about, a state house district in Florida, whether we were talking about, a special election in whatever, in a red state, you name it. What we've been consistently finding is, remember the reporting, holy crap, nobody saw this coming. This person was going to, was supposed to be a solid red state. This was a Trump plus 10, a plus Trump 15. And all of a sudden, whoever the candidate was exceeded all expectations.
We literally saw this last week in Alaska. We saw that Democrat Greer Hopkins in Alaska win a plus 15 Trump area, flipping it blue. Like, we keep seeing this over and over and over again. So you really got to put a lot of faith in these pollsters modeling and totally ignore all of the actual data that we've seen over the past 2 years in particular in order to kind of buy all that stuff. Now, I'll say this. It's an interesting thing because everything's a bit of a game with polling, and you see how Trump tries to use polling to project strength. And it's why Trump and the Republicans try to throw out all this junk and garbage to show, look, we're ahead. Look, it's inevitable that we're going to win this thing, right? It's why you see Trump and Elon Musk even try to game these betting markets like Polymarket and things like that in order to make it seem, look at all this energy, enthusiasm, even though that means absolutely zero. The Democrats, though, and I'm going to be critical of them here, they have an opposite strategy, which is scare people into donating money by saying, we're behind, it's over. How many emails have you gotten like over the past few days? I get them all day. That's like, Brett, this is really bad. Brett, it's not looking good. And so you have the Republican strategy, which is project strength, we're going to win. And then you have the Democrat strategy, which is like, the world's going to end tomorrow unless you give me $5 right now. And so, yeah, I mean, they're both putting out the same message ultimately, and it's obviously going to affect people's psyches, in a certain way. So you got to kind of learn to ignore all that stuff. And the only reason that quite frankly, that I even bring up polls in general, and we do, is to just push back on the propaganda that Donald Trump tries to inject every day with all of his fake BS, because it's not representative at all of actual reality. In fact, there were these leaked internal polls. I did a video on this earlier this morning. The leaked internal polls from the Senate Republican Committee, like the top GOP committee run by Mitch McConnell, which is helping to elect Senate Republicans, had like the worst numbers ever for the Republicans across the country in nearly every state. I think they had the only state that had Republicans up in their own internal polls that they did not want leaked, by the way, whereas Montana up 4 and Texas only up 1 in the Ted Cruz race against Colin Allred. So those were the polls that they didn't want to get out there. But then the polls that they do want to push out there, you see all, and the names are also so obvious. It's like America First polling, Patriot Plus polling. You're like, you can at least like try to hide the ball a little bit, folks, right? But it's all like a weird psychological kind of operation that they're running, and the Democrats do it too, but the Democrats do it in the opposite direction to the detriment of people to try to, get enthusiasm, whatever. Ultimately, what I hope is that fear actually, it does motivate people, though, to understand the stakes and gets them out to the polls. And I hope it doesn't paralyze them and go, this is too bad, and my vote isn't going to matter. My voice doesn't matter. That's where it scares me when I see that sort of messaging being used in emails and stuff. But to counter that, I'll say, like we were saying earlier, Democrats aren't flooding the zone with fake BS polls, because that's not where they're putting their money into. They're putting their money into actual canvassing efforts and get out the vote efforts, and are actually doing the fundamentals, buying ads. They're actually doing the work that is required to win elections, while Republicans are just playing these weird psychological operations every single day. So that's my analysis on this whole situation.
Well, look, I'll leave you all with this final analysis. Before doing it, first, make sure you're registered to vote. Make sure your family members who will vote for democracy are registered to vote. That's one of the easiest steps that you can take right now. Encourage your neighbors, encourage others, be an ambassador for our democracy. That will go a long way. So many people watch this show that even if everybody just does a little bit, that will have an exponential impact. Next, let me show you what I think this election is ultimately going to be about. On the one hand, I'm going to show you 2 clips of Donald Trump, him talking about sleeping with charts and graphs, him bragging about how much he loves TiVo. On the other hand, I'm going to show you 2 of what I think are the most powerful ads by Vice President Kamala Harris. One using the words of a Republican mayor from Mesa, Arizona, a very conservative Republican area. The other of Trump's own staffers saying, do not vote for this guy. First, let me show you Donald Trump talking about sleeping and kissing his immigration charts. Play this clip.
I want to have a strong border, and that's why we had that beautiful chart, my favorite chart in history. I sleep with it, I kiss it.
Here he is talking about TiVo being the greatest thing ever. Play this clip.
I watched that debate. It's, the TiVo or its equivalent. I give it the greatest invention in history, TiVo or its equivalent. I watched.
Here is Republican mayor of Mesa, Arizona, Mayor John Giles, in this ad. It's pretty good. Here, play it.
In cities like mine, folks look out for each other. They put their community first. I'm a lifelong Republican, but I've always put country over party. And I know Donald Trump's second term would be all about himself. That's why, like so many other Republicans, I cannot support Donald Trump. Kamala Harris and I may not agree on everything, but I do know that she will always put country first. If we're going to make progress as a country, we have to have an adult in the White House. That's why I'm supporting Kamala Harris.
I'm Kamala Harris, and I approve this message.
It's the Republican mayor of Mesa, Arizona. I was going to play the other clip. I don't think we need to. I think that makes the point that I want to make. I think that is going to be part of the major difference in this election. I think Donald Trump's been trying to attract low propensity voters. And Democrats are trying to attract high propensity voters and solidify its traditional kind of coalition, while Donald Trump's doing stunts. Everything's a stunt. I mean, how many videos have me and Brett and others here made? Those firefighters behind Donald Trump are actually not firefighters. They're just wearing firefighter costumes, and they're pretending to be Scranton firefighters. I mean, those people behind Donald Trump are not auto workers. They're just people wearing, or behind J.D. Vance. They're not auto workers. They're not really union members. He's at a fake union shop pretending that it's union workers. And this stuff works. I mean, propaganda works in history. Unfortunately, people see that and then they go, oh, these people support him. Maybe I should support him. And not listen to the words. You do realize that he's bragging about not paying people overtime. I mean, you've got Donald Trump and J.D. Vance out there saying that they are not supporting the PRO Act. How a union can look at the candidates and go, on the one hand, you got Vice President Kamala Harris, who worked with President Biden, the most pro-union presidency in American history. They support the PRO Act, which is critical to our very survival. On the other hand, you've got Donald Trump mocking contractors, saying they shouldn't be paid overtime, saying that he hates paying overtime and that he loves to screw people, him attacking the cities themselves, him doing stolen valor and portraying people as first responders, frankly, unlawfully, who aren't the first responders, and then saying that they don't support the PRO Act. And then you would support that? I mean, you're going to support someone who's literally saying they're going to screw your family, and cause you harm. Look, it goes to the power of propaganda, but there's a way to deal with this, and I think the way to deal with this, we got to get out facts, we got to get out the truth, and that's something we're going to do together each and every day here on this network. So with that, I want to thank everybody for watching this episode. It's great to be back. Let's do a little after show today. I haven't done one in a while. Let's talk to everybody. Let's have that chat. Go to patreon.com/MeidasTouch. Join our Patreon. I'm excited to chat with everybody after. It'll be great to see you all on the after show. We'll plan our question and answer session soon as well. We'll do a live exclusive Zoom meeting on Patreon as well. So looking forward to all of that. Thanks everybody for watching, and Jordy, take us out.
Shout out to the Meidas Mighty!
The Meidas Mighty standing strong against the fascists. We sing our song. We will get it right whenever.
It's Ken Harbaugh with the MeidasTouch Network. The film Against All Enemies, which I co-produced with Ben Meiselas and this network, has won awards around the world for its up-close portrayal of America's insurrectionist movement. It premieres in the U.S. on March 29th on Amazon and Apple TV. Go to againstallenemiesfilm.com or click the link below. But don't just watch Against All Enemies. Tell your friends about it. It's one more way to hold accountable those who threaten our democracy. Thanks, Meidas Mighty. Let's use our power well.